Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward.
Chapter 1. Looking at the strange environment around him, the air was filled with the smell of alcohol. Li Ye felt that he had fallen asleep. After rubbing his aching head, Li Ye sat up from the bed. Did he work overtime last night and fainted? Was he then sent to the hospital by that kind person? After subconsciously looking around, Li Ye found that he was actually in the health room. It's not a hospital. Because he saw a sign on one side of the wall that said Teikō Middle School Clinic. Teikō Middle School? Is there such a school in City A? Just when Li Ye was still confused, a rush of footsteps suddenly came from outside the door, and then a young lady in a white coat walked towards Li Ye with concern. Ueno-kun, are you awake? Are you feeling better? Looking at the medical lady in front of him, Li Ye subconsciously looked around. Ueno-san? I seem to be the only one in the room. Could it be that this Ueno-san is talking about me? Pointing at himself, Li Ye asked with some confusion, Ueno-san, are you talking about me? The medical lady looked at Li Ye, who was full of doubts and was slightly surprised. Could it be that the training was stupid? Unable to help but feel a little worried, he stepped forward and touched the other's forehead, complaining a little, I really don't know why Coach Shangzhen is training you so hard. Doesn't he know that Teikō Middle School has a miracle era? You can't beat them at all. Look, he doesn't have anything to do, but he has exhausted all of you. While talking, the medical lady examined Li Ye again. At this moment, Li Ye had his eyes widened and looked at the medical lady, who was still complaining. The other party seems to be speaking Japanese, and I seem to understand it just now. The most important thing is that I seem to be able to speak Japanese. Teikō Junior High School? Age of Miracles? Isn't this Kuroko's basketball world? Li Ye looked at the medical lady to sort out his thoughts, took a deep breath to calm down, and then wanted to confirm, is the Teikō Middle School you are talking about the Teikō Middle School with the miracle era? As soon as he finished speaking, Li Ye was lightly tapped on the forehead by the medical lady, who said with some displeasure, you know, you need to use honorifics when asking seniors. Yes, you will play against Teikō Middle School tomorrow. I really don't know if you are unlucky. Okay, you should have a good rest. With that said, he checked Li Ye's pupils again and found that there was nothing wrong, so he got up and left. After rubbing the area where he was knocked, Li Ye was 100% sure at this moment. I have traveled through time. Travel to Kuroko's basketball world. In that world, when playing basketball, you always like to use superpower plug-ins. And it seems that tomorrow I will have to play against the one who has the strongest middle school miracle era. Isn't this a joke? In the anime, Era of Miracles achieved the title of 3 consecutive middle school championships without any pressure. I am still in a middle school that I haven't even played in. This is not the same level at all. Lying flat on the hospital bed with some exhaustion, just when he was about to recall Kuroko's basketball story, Li Ye suddenly felt that many strange yet familiar memories popped up in his mind. Ueno Juri, the name of this body. A middle school student at Teikō Middle School. He is also the captain of the middle school basketball team. I don't know if it was good luck or bad luck, but their coach was in the preliminary draw 2 days ago. One shot into the soul. I was drawn directly to Teikō Middle School. Logically speaking, a national champion like Teikō Middle School should advance directly to the semi-finals, but because it is a middle school, it has to start from the preliminary round. When you get to college, you will receive some special treatment. And when they learned that the first game was Teikō Middle School, they immediately turned off the flames. Except for the body owner, the other members of the basketball team gave up directly. Some people even quit the team altogether. It's not that they don't want to work hard, it's that the gap in strength is really too big. Moreover, every time Era of Miracles hits the back, it will humiliate the opponent. This made them, who were just middle school students, unwilling to face that humiliation. Rubbing his swollen forehead, Ueno Juri felt that his head was almost getting bigger at this moment. Although the miracle era at this time was not the peak of strength, it was definitely a period that he did not want to encounter. Because during this period of the Age of Miracles, there was no respect at all, except for the male protagonist Kuroko. Most people just play basketball with a playful mentality. After a few minutes of fighting, just leave and humiliate your opponent. The Age of Miracles? There are geniuses that are rare in 10 years? And there are 6 of them. Looking at the ceiling in a daze, Ueno felt like he was about to be brutalized by the protagonists at the beginning. Why don't you just take a sick leave and lie down? There is no need for you to have fun with the protagonist group. Although he also wanted to punch Teikō Junior High and kick the Miracle Age. But he doesn't have that ability. Isn't it ridiculous to play basketball with a group of cheating protagonists? You are making yourself uncomfortable. The next day, a white bus slowly drove out of Teikō Middle School. Looking at the depressed players in the car, Coach Shang Xin felt very complicated and helpless, mixed with self-blame. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he remained silent. The Age of Miracles. In the era of miracles, which is holding middle school students across the country breathless, there is no doubt about their strength. Sitting at the back of the bus, Ueno quietly looked at the scenery outside the window, a little lost in thought. In the end, he decided to play. Although the outcome was defeat, he wanted to see it. How strong is the protagonist group that can dominate an era? Although he had watched anime in his previous life, he also wanted to have some contact with real people. When Ueno was still in a daze, a team member on the side gently pulled his sleeve and asked with some concern, "Captain, are you okay?" Hearing this, Ueno turned to look at the team member, shook his head slightly and said with a smile, "Don't worry, everything is fine." Seeing that Ueno was fine, the team members also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the most powerful person in their team now is their captain, Ueno Satoki. Then he lowered his head and whispered in a complicated voice, "If I were the captain, I wouldn't come here. Playing with them is really..." As he spoke, he fell silent again. In this regard, Ueno didn't know how to comfort him. To be honest, it is absolutely sad to be born in the same era as the Age of Miracles, because everyone will only remember them. No matter how hard you try, it will only be a stumbling block to the Age of Miracles. But at the same time, he is lucky. Because you have witnessed an era of miracles. Chapter 2. Sports Park. When the bus slowly stopped, Ueno and the others were shocked when they looked at the huge sports park not far away. The sports park, a super stadium that can accommodate tens of thousands of people, covers an even larger area. The sports park is basically only used during the finals. But today we made an exception for the preliminary round. The reason is simple, because this is Teikō Junior High School's competition. Because this is the preliminary round of the Age of Miracles. Looking at the crowds of spectators around the stadium, Ueno couldn't help but be a little shocked. They knew that these people came to see the game, but they didn't come to see them, they came to see Teikō Middle School, but there were too many of them, and they were all crowded at first glance. There were not only spectators in the crowd, but also people from many other schools and even other colleges and universities. Because this year is the 3rd year of Teikō Middle School, the year when the miracle era is about to graduate, and it is also the year when other colleges and universities are competing for students. While Ueno and the others were still in shock, 3 luxury buses slowly stopped not far from them. When the people on the bus slowly got off, suddenly, everyone around couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's the miracle era of Teikō Middle School. Ah! Kais is so handsome. I love you, Kais. What a powerful aura." As expected of Teikō Middle School. For the shock of others, Ueno and the others were different. Everyone looked ugly, and the atmosphere was depressing. Compared with the basketball players of Teikō Middle School, their basketball players only have less than 10 people, and the opponent team probably has almost 100 people. Looking toward the Age of Miracles, Ueno didn't know why, but at first glance he spotted Kuroko, who had familiar sky blue hair, but he looked slightly uncomfortable at the moment. You must be worried about the changes in people in the Age of Miracles, right? And when Ueno looked away, Kuroko's blue pupils subconsciously looked in the direction of Ueno, his eyes full of doubts. Was someone looking at me just now? Was it my imagination? Little Kuroko, what's wrong? Looking at the eyes of his friend Kuroko, Kai's didn't see anything. His handsome face was full of doubts. Nothing. Shaking his head, Kuroko didn't say much. In this regard, Kai's didn't ask any more questions, but began to smile and greet the fans around him, which caused another round of screams from the female fans around him. Sports Park Interior. Leading the team to the locker room where their Middle School was hung, Ueno changed into the black jersey of Middle School and sat quietly in the corner without saying a word, silently observing the situation of the other team members. Compared with other team members, he has an adult psychological quality and several years of social experience. Ueno's endurance is definitely much stronger than that of other team members. The other team members all looked very ugly at this moment, but Ueno looked calm. After glancing around the locker room, Coach Shangxin, who was standing aside, couldn't help but sigh secretly. The Age of Miracles is really like a huge mountain, weighing down the people of the same generation. When looking at Ueno's calm face, Coach Yui was slightly surprised and relieved. Ueno Juri is his most proud disciple and the hardest working disciple he has ever led. After a while, the game is about to begin. Please let the players from Teikō Middle School and Oki Middle School enter to warm up and prepare. As the announcement sounded, Ueno couldn't help but take a deep breath. The team members around him all looked a little bad and looked a little panicked. Ueno also played basketball in his previous life, but it was just for fun. Especially basketball in this world is played with superpowers, which is completely different. Walking towards the basketball court, Ueno, who was walking at the end of the team, was suddenly startled, and then recovered immediately. But at this moment, his eyes were a little excited and incredible. Ding! Sign-in system activated. Do you want to sign in? Listening to this cold electronic sound, Ueno almost jumped up with excitement. System? This is good stuff. Forcibly suppressing the excitement in his heart, Ueno glanced at his teammates and replied secretly in his heart. Sign in. Ding. Sign in successfully and get the enhanced zone. Ding, the next check-in time is 7 days later. Hearing this, Ueno was stunned. Zone? Or an enhanced version? Isn't this the biggest cheat in Kuroko's basketball world? Even the protagonist Kuroko has no potential to enter this zone state. Zone, a state in which potential is fully activated. It can also be said to be a field. Abilities that can increase strength, jumping ability, speed, vision, reaction, etc. to 100%. However, if you want to start Zoan, you must not only have talent, but also have a heart that loves basketball. When he learned that his first sign-in was for Zone, a super cheat, Ueno almost stopped laughing. But after a moment, he smiled bitterly again. Zone's burden is a bit heavy. I don't know if his body can handle it. It is estimated that even if it is forcibly opened, it will only take 1 minute, which is still Ueno's maximum time estimate. Maybe there won't even be a minute left. You know, in the original drama, Qing Feng and the others were able to open Zone a long time ago. It was just that because it was too much of a burden on themselves, Akashi Sejuro stopped them from using it in middle school. Moreover, Zone strengthens all aspects of itself based on its own foundation. The current physical fitness and basketball skills of Ueno are only above average, and there is still a big gap between them and the top level of the miracle era. Forget it, at least we won't lose so ugly later. Ueno understands that even if he activates Zone, he will definitely not be his opponent in the Age of Miracles, because they can also activate zone. But what does this enhanced version mean? With some doubts in his heart, Ueno asked the system in his mind, "System, what does this enhanced version of zone mean?" Answer the host, "The enhanced version of zone can increase one's own strength to 120%. 120%. Some were shocked, but mostly excited. The corner of Ueno's mouth curled up slightly. Now, he just needs to catch up with the era of miracles. Fortunately, the previous owner of this body was a basketball training fanatic, and his talent was pretty good, otherwise he would probably not be able to reach the above-average level. Ueno believes that now that he has launched the enhanced version of Zone, he should be able to score a few points in the hands of Era of Miracles. You know, after winning the first national middle school basketball competition championship in the Miracle Era, no one from the teams they played against had ever scored a point in the Miracle Era, except in garbage time after coming on the bench. Taking a deep breath, Ueno now has the confidence to compete with the protagonists of the Age of Miracles. Or, defeat the Age of Miracles and create his own Age of Miracles. Chapter 3. Arriving at the basketball court and looking at the crowded auditorium, Ueno couldn't help but feel a little nervous. After all, being stared at by tens of thousands of eyes would make everyone a little nervous. But after a while, he recovered, and Ueno was doing pretty well. Each of his team members was more nervous than the last. Even those with poor mental abilities and pale faces have begun to retreat. Looking at his team members, Coach Shangzhen clapped his hands gently, focusing everyone's attention on him. Just wait for the game and don't leave any regrets to yourselves. As he said that, he looked at Ueno and the others silently, and finally stopped at Ueno. Ueno, take them to warm up. Yes, coach. Taking the basketball on the side, Ueno led his team members to the basketball court. Simply run around twice, move your joints, and then start shooting and passing the ball to find your touch. It's just that the team members' condition almost made Ueno shake his head. Ueno couldn't help but sigh slightly in his heart when he saw his team members who were stiff in their movements and who kept making mistakes even in the warm-up. The name of a person, the shadow of a tree. The 4 words "the Age of Miracles" really make people of the same generation feel powerless. Those who can face the Age of Miracles and still have the courage to fight are probably the 5 tiger generals from the Age of Miracles. It is difficult for others to have the courage to face the era of miracles. After all, the other party has created a dynasty belonging to them. While Ueno and the others were still practicing shooting, the basketball court suddenly started to boil. The whole audience was shouting for the Age of Miracles. Shanghai paused for a moment, then subconsciously turned his head and looked behind him. I saw Akashi Sejuro slowly walking into the basketball court with the Miracle Era crowd. The opponent's powerful aura was astonishing to Ueno even from dozens of meters away. Teikō Junior High School. Akashi Sejuro and the others were accustomed to the cheers from the audience and didn't pay attention. Kais kept waving his hands towards the audience in response. As soon as he sat down, Atsushi Murasakibara took out a bag of snacks from nowhere and ate it. He said with a very lazy expression, "Akazai, I don't want to play. I'm winning anyway. Can you let me go back?" Hearing this, Akashi Sejuro smiled slightly and said, "You will start the game later." Ah! Hearing that he was starting the game, Atsushi Murasakibara felt a little helpless, and then started eating snacks. Qing Feng on the side was closing his eyes and concentrating. He was no longer interested in this kind of competition, and he no longer had the same excitement as before. After winning too much, I have become numb. As for Kais, he looked at Kuroko with a smile and said, "How are you, little Kuroko? Have you thought about it? After graduation, you can go to the same college with me." "I refuse." Kuroko glanced at Kais and shook his head silently. He refused. After saying that, he ignored Kais who looked sad and began to recall their past. The current era of miracles is no longer the original era of miracles. In this era of miracles, winning is the first priority. This era of miracles is not what Kuroko wants. Sitting aside, looking at today's mascot, the sunny doll, and pushing up his glasses, Midorima Shinter was slightly confused. Because in today's morning divination, although they were bound to win, why did it show that there were other factors? This puzzled him. However, he believed that the final victory must belong to them. Looking at everyone, Mamoa, as the manager of the basketball department, has already compiled all the information about her opponent Teikō Middle School. Everyone, I have compiled the information about Teikō Middle School. Do you want to take a look? Hearing this, Kai's waved his hands casually and said, "Little Mamoa, just say it." Looking at the casual attitude of everyone, Mamoa couldn't help but sigh secretly, and then smiled. Teikō Middle School, the members include player number 7 Ueno Juri, the forward position, no outstanding ability, overall balance, number 8. The danger they pose to us is 0. As soon as Mamoa finished speaking, Kai's waved his hands in boredom. Well, then let's just have fun. Looking at his confident teammates, Akashi Sejuro also smiled confidently and said, then we will stick to the old rules and score 100 points in the first half. Good. Victory is already within their grasp. Beep. When the whistle blows, the players from the two teams take up positions with each other. As the forward of the team, Ueno also has a good height. At 180 centimeters, it can be said that he is already very tall. And their middle peak is higher, 188 centimeters. Also their ball grabber. After selecting the venue, the game officially begins. Although Ueno's Nakamine is 188 centimeters tall, compared with Atsushi Murasakibara from the Miracle Era, he is still a little short. Moreover, the strength of both sides is not at the same level at all. In just a moment, Atsushi Murasakibara took the lead in getting the basketball. Looking at the Era of Miracles side, except for Kuroko, all other regular members of the Era of Miracles are on the field. In fact, Ueno is eager for Kuroko to play. For some reason, the opponent's passive presence is of no use to him. In other words, in the Age of Miracles, he can still defeat one. Because except for the very low presence of passive skills, Kuroko is also good at passing the ball, and in other aspects he is like a novice. Ueno is confident of beating Kuroko. But what Ueno didn't expect was that his opponent at the moment was actually Kai's. Looking at Kai's pressed against him, he felt a headache. Because in the current era of miracles, Kai's can be said to be a talker, compared to others. Looking at Ueno, who was a few centimeters taller than him, Kai's lips curled up slightly. Ueno-san, right? You have to work hard. My teammates are all very powerful. Do. Just when Ueno was about to reply, a whistle suddenly sounded, and he subconsciously turned his head to look at his basketball hoop. I saw Ching Feng hanging on the basketball hoop with one hand, and the basketball was beating on the ground. In the first few seconds, the opponent had already scored a goal. The scorer also showed that Teikō Middle School scored 2 points. At this moment, the score between Teikō Middle School and Teikō Middle School is high. 2:0. Chapter 4. As the game time passed by, Ueno discovered that in addition to the opponent's scorer, it was constantly beating. Their scorer is always 0. He glanced at his teammates. They were all breathing heavily, and there was no desire to resist in their somewhat empty eyes. At this moment, there are still a few minutes before the end of the first half, but the score has already reached 60:0. And after only 10 minutes of playing, Ueno and the others had already changed 2 people. It is not only a physical exertion, but also a mental stress drain. After receiving the pass from his teammate and looking at Kai's with a relaxed smile on his face, Ueno couldn't help but sigh slightly. It seems that he still has to use zone to get points. The strength of the two sides is really very different. But when using zone, he has to find the right time. Because what he was facing was the age of miracles. Dribbling the ball and looking at his teammates who were being guarded by the opponent, Ueno felt helpless. It seemed that he could only break through by himself. Accelerating with his right foot, Ueno wanted to break through from Kai's right side, but was stopped by the opponent turning around. Looking at Ueno, Kai smiled and said, "I am also very strong. Don't underestimate me." As he said that, his eyes changed, and his right hand suddenly shot towards the basketball that Ueno was playing. There was only a bang sound, and the basketball was shot directly out of the court by the opponent. Although Ueno noticed the opponent's movements, the opponent's speed was so fast that he couldn't react at all and could only watch the opponent hit the ball. In response, Kai touched the back of his head in embarrassment, and smiled at Ueno, who looked a little unhappy. "Oh, I'm sorry, I used too much force." Hearing this, Ueno ignored the opponent and just silently turned back to the court to receive the serve. Looking at Ueno's back, the corners of Kai's mouth raised slightly. What an interesting person. After playing so many games, even those 5 people known as the 5 Tigers would look ugly when facing them. Ueno, on the other hand, looked very calm from beginning to end, which made him slightly interested. After receiving the pass and looking at Kai's, who was trying to block him again, Ueno's eyes gradually began to condense with several black lightnings. The clay figure also has 3 points of fire, not to mention the upper field. After being provoked several times by the other party, he planned to respond well. Originally, he planned to keep zone to deal with the substitutes from the Miracle era, so that he could score more points more stably, but now he doesn't plan to do that. He lowered his head slightly, looking at Kai's who was blocking him with a smile, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Enhanced version of zone, open. Suddenly, a bolt of black lightning ripped through Kai's defense and flew directly towards the Teikō Middle School basketball basket. In a matter of seconds, black lightning flashed across half of the basketball court, leaving behind an afterimage of black lightning. How is it possible? That guy actually... From the corner of his eye, he looked at Ueno, who had turned into black lightning, and at the opponent's number 7 black jersey. There was no smile on Kai's face at this moment, and he was full of shock and disbelief. "No, stop him quickly." Seeing Ueno who was about to enter his basketball penalty area, Akashi Sejuro roared loudly. At this moment, everyone in the Age of Miracles gave up their defense and ran towards Ueno. At this moment, the closest person to Ueno is Atsushi Murasakibara, who is guarding the basket. Looking at Ueno, whose eyes were extremely cold and black lightning kept blazing, Atsushi Murasakibara roared and walked directly in front of Ueno. The big hand opened directly, blocking Ueno in front of him like an iron arm. "Don't try to break through me." Looking at Atsushi Murasakibara, Ueno felt a slight pain all over his body, which was caused by the heavy burden on his body. However, he had to score this goal no matter what. The black lightning in his eyes exploded more and more. Looking at Atsushi Murasakibara in front of him, Ueno jumped up without any hesitation, intending to force a dunk. "Don't even think about it." Seeing this, Atsushi Murasakibara glared, shouted, jumped up, and slapped the basketball in Ueno's right hand with his huge hands. Bang! A loud noise echoed throughout the basketball court. The basketball was slapped hard into the sky. Ueno and Atsushi Murasakibara couldn't help but fall behind them at the same time. But at this moment, the black lightning in Ueno's eyes tore apart afterimages. Enduring the severe pain all over his body, he forcibly twisted his body in midair and looked at the basketball that was gradually falling. Ueno suddenly exerted force with his right foot, kicked hard on the basketball court, and jumped up again. Under Atsushi Murasakibara's disbelieving and unwilling eyes, he picked up the basketball with his right hand again and smashed it against the basketball hoop. But at this moment, a hand appeared in Ueno's field of vision again, stopped his attack, and slapped the basketball hard. The person who came was none other than Ching Feng. Feeling the resistance coming from the basketball, Shang was full of unwillingness. The severe pain all over his body reminded him all the time that his body was overloaded. However, he must score this goal no matter what. Looking at the basketball hoop so close at hand, Shang Xiang's unwillingness became stronger and he couldn't help but roar. "Let me in!" The black lightning that was about to dissipate in his eyes burst out again. In King Feng's shocked eyes, he slammed the basketball into the basketball hoop. As the basketball was hit hard into the basketball hoop by Ueno. Bang! 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 The only sound left in the audience was the sound of basketballs falling and hitting the basketball court. They looked at Ayamine and Atsushi Murasakibara who were lying aside, and they looked at Akash Sejuro who was standing behind Ueno and looking at him in disbelief. At this moment, the whole audience was silent. A moment later, a whistle sounded throughout the basketball court. Beep! The goal is valid. Wow! As the referee's words fell, the whole audience burst into excitement, looking at the number 7 player wearing a black jersey surrounded by the Miracle Era. Look at the Ueno who single-handedly scored a goal in the Miracle Era. The whole crowd cheered. Looking at Ueno in front of him, Kaisa's face was very ugly at the moment, and his hands were tightly clenched into fists. This guy, is unforgivable. The ball was thrown from his hand, so he felt that he had been inexplicably humiliated. Is this what is called a variable? Reaching out to push up his glasses, Midorima took a few deep breaths. He had tried his best to catch up just now, but he was still one step late. What he didn't expect was that the opponent actually forced a ball in King Feng's hands. At this moment, Ayamine also looked at Ueno in surprise. He was very familiar with the state the other party was in just now. As for Atsushi Murasakibara, he was furious at this moment and wanted to tear Ueno in half. Looking at Ueno on the court, Kuroko, who was sitting on the bench of Teikō Middle School, had disbelief in his eyes. This was the first time he saw someone who could defeat Atsushi Murasakibara and Ayamine head-on. Although Qing Feng was in a hurry to save the situation, he did not show his full strength. However, after Ueno defeated Atsushi Murasakibara head-on, he forced the ball to take off in that critical situation. Looking at Ueno, Mamwa on the side was pale at the moment. He kept looking at the information in his hand and kept mumbling. Impossible, impossible, how could this happen? On the basketball court, Ueno now felt as if his whole body had been run over by dozens of large cars. When he took a breath, his chest felt like it was being torn apart. At this moment, his face was pale and his whole body was wet with sweat. He endured the pain and walked slowly towards his basketball court. The time just now was estimated to be less than 10 seconds, but the burden was so great. This made him know that he had overestimated his own physical fitness and underestimated the burden brought by Zone. When passing by Kai's, Ueno couldn't help but smile when he looked at his ugly face. Sorry, I accidentally scored. As soon as he finished speaking, Ueno felt his eyes go dark, the world was spinning, and he fainted. Chapter 5. Time flies. It has been half a month since the last game against Teikō Middle School. Ueno also graduated from junior high school. Westlake Community. At this moment, a guest came to Ueno's house. Looking at the smiling old man drinking tea in front of him, Ueno Juri fell silent. He is thinking. And this old man is a coach in college, and his purpose is very simple, just to let Ueno play ball there. Looking at the silent Ueno, Coach Shinkawa was very nervous in his eyes, but he still chuckled and said, Ueno-san, if you come to our school, I can give you the greatest benefits, such as scholarships and so on. Hearing this, Ueno looked at Coach Shinkawa and smiled, Coach Shinkawa, can you give me 2 days? Listening to Ueno's answer, Coach Shinkawa couldn't help but sigh secretly. He felt a little bitter in his heart, but he still smiled and said, okay. But Coach Shinkawa knows that Ueno probably won't go to him. Because their school is just an ordinary school and does not have any reputation in basketball. Watching Coach Shinkawa leave, Ueno was silent for a moment again, then went back to the house to change his clothes, put on a weight bag and went out for a run. Since the last match against Teikō Junior High School, he has begun to work hard on his physical fitness. As for technical aspects, these are secondary to him now. After all, he has Zone, and with such an incredible plug-in, of course he will focus on Zone first. As he ran along the river, Ueno began to think about the high school he was going to. After the last match against Teikō Junior High School, Ueno's reputation suddenly became louder. Although they lost the game, he was also the first and the only one to score points in their hands when all the official players of the Miracle Era were on the field. Therefore, even if half a month has passed, coaches from schools will still come to him and want Ueno to join their school. Including those schools in his impression, such as T High School where Ayamindaki is located. But Ueno refused one by one. After finishing the run, when Ueno returned, Ueno's parents had already returned. "I'm back." After entering the house and taking off his shoes and weight-bearing equipment, Ueno rushed into the bathroom with a change of clothes. On the dinner table. Looking at Ueno who was in a daze from time to time while eating, Ueno's father and mother couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes full of worry and concern. Ueno's father, "Have you not decided which school to go to yet?" Hearing this, Ueno put down the bowl and chopsticks and nodded with a wry smile, "Yet." Ueno's father also put down his bowl and chopsticks, thought for a moment, and looked at Ueno and said, "No matter which school you want to go to, your mother and I will support you. But if you can, go to Tokyo University. Eastern University." Ueno was slightly curious, because he knew about this school, and the coach Shinkawa who came today was the coach from Tokyo University. Nodding, Ueno's father's eyes flashed with memories, he looked at Ueno's mother, and then smiled and said, "Because your mother, your father, and I all graduated from that school. The education provided by Dongda University is top-notch." As he spoke, Ueno's father's face was filled with pride, but after a moment he said with some embarrassment, "But in terms of basketball, there may be some gaps." In response to this, Ueno couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. Some? Even the preliminaries are just a formality for the school, and even in Kuroko's basketball, there is no school that is qualified to play a supporting role. But he didn't say anything. After all, this was his parents' alma mater. After thinking for a moment again, Ueno glanced at his father and mother, and nodded slightly. "Then Dongda will be great." Hearing this, Ueno's father was very happy when he saw that Ueno had agreed to go to Tokyo University, his alma mater, while his mother couldn't help but be concerned and said, "Ueno, we are just giving you some advice." As he said that, he looked at Ueno's father again and continued, "The final decision is up to you." Looking at his concerned parents, Ueno smiled and said, "Well, I have already decided to go to Tokyo University. If it is unknown, then I will create the name of Dongda." April. The season of cherry blossoms. On both sides of the street, cherry blossoms are flying all over the sky, like a dream, as if pulling people into a two-dimensional world. Tokyo. Eastern University. As soon as he entered the school gate, Ueno heard countless shouts. Several fat seniors shouted with excitement, "Junior, come to our reading club. Our club only reads Kang Shanwells and is empty." Several sweet-looking seniors, "Swimming club, keep fit, and the seniors will teach you step by step. Go club. Tennis is a man's choice." Carrying a backpack, Ueno liked this feeling very much as he looked at the tables filled with people at the entrance of the school and at the various clubs that were doing anything to grab people. With his outstanding height and handsome face, Ueno is also very popular and is often robbed by various clubs. But he had already decided on the club, so he could only refuse them one by one. After going around in circles and rejecting more than a dozen clubs, Ueno finally found a recruiting sign for the basketball club in a corner. 2 shabby tables were placed there. 2 members of the admissions club were leaning on the table listlessly with their chins in one hand, looking around aimlessly. Just when Ueno was about to step forward, a figure came to the basketball club recruitment office ahead of him. He looked at the two listless seniors and bent down and loudly said, "I want to sign up for the basketball club." Hearing this, the two admissions officers subconsciously looked at the person in front of them who spoke. When they saw the person coming, they first looked at each other, and then they frowned involuntarily. Because the person who came here is really short and has a very thin figure. He is estimated to be less than 1.6 meters tall. This height definitely falls into the short category in college basketball clubs. Even in the middle school, he is considered short. After yawning, one of the recruiters pointed to the sign next to him that said Basketball Club Recruitment and said, "Junior, are you mistaken? We are a basketball club." Unexpectedly, the man nodded seriously and said, "Well, the basketball club I want to sign up for is." "Junior, what's your name?" "Kurotani Sora." As soon as he finished speaking, Ueno, who was standing behind, couldn't help but shrink his eyes slightly, and then subconsciously looked at the other person. Seeing each other's serious expressions, the two new members smiled bitterly. "Okay, then you fill out the form first, and remember to go to the basketball club for roll call after class in the afternoon." Looking at the registration form handed over to him, Sora Kurotani was very excited, yet. After taking the form, I began to fill it out seriously. "I'll sign up too." While Sora Kurotani was still filling out the form, Ueno also walked over. He was 1.85 meters tall and looked down at the two seniors. After a moment, the two seniors couldn't help but subconsciously stood up. "So hi. Junior, fill out the form." Taking the watch, Ueno turned to smile at Kurotani Sora, who was looking at him in a daze, stretched out his right hand and said, "Ueno Juri." Seeing this, Sora Kurotani quickly regained his composure, stretched out his right hand toward Ueno in a panic and said, "Sora Kurotani." Chapter 6. The school at Dongda is very big. The campus is full of cherry blossom trees. The cherry blossoms flying all over the sky are very beautiful. After walking around in a circle, Ueno finally found his class with the help of several seniors. Class A, first grade. And Sora Kurotani, whom I met just now, is in Class B next door to him. Sitting in the corner by the window, Ueno began to look at the other students in the classroom. As for why I was sitting in the corner of the back seat by the window. The back row is by the window, the hometown of Wang. Ueno's class size is estimated to be over 40. Half and half men and women. After waiting quietly for about half an hour, as the bell rang, a female teacher walked in. The moment the teacher came in, the originally noisy classroom suddenly became quiet. Pushing up the frames of his glasses, the teacher looked at this new class with a smile on his face. "Hello, classmates, I am your class teacher for the next 3 years." After the class teacher finished speaking, he received the books and then introduced himself. As Ueno is 1.85 meters tall, he can definitely be said to be the backbone of the class. Before he even opened his mouth, everyone in the classroom was shocked. "So high. And he's so handsome. Why does this guy always look familiar?" Ignoring everyone's comments, Ueno simply introduced himself. "Hello, classmates, my name is Ueno Juri, please take good care of me in the future." Unlike Ueno's previous country Z, the school bags in country R all look like handbags. The books can't hold much, so basically I just need to take back what I learned today and review it carefully. Or maybe, just bring whatever books you have to attend today, and leave the extra ones at home. The first day of school. Basically, the main thing is to get books and get to know each other. Seeing that it was almost time, the class teacher started the most important thing on the first day of school. General cleaning. As the backbone of the class, Ueno was assigned the important task of cleaning up cobwebs by the class teacher. In fact, the class is not dirty, but cleaning at the beginning of school may have become a habit. While sweeping the cobwebs in the class with a broom, Ueno suddenly felt like someone was staring at him. Turning around, he saw Sora Kuratani looking at him with a happy face, and he was holding a bucket in his hand. Ueno-san. Is this Sora-san? Hello. Kurotani Sora held the bucket in both hands and looked at Uenomichi expectantly. When class is over, let's go to the basketball club together. Good. After thinking for a moment, Ueno nodded. Looking up at Ueno, who was 1.85 meters tall, Kurotani Sora's eyes were full of shock, and his tone was even more envious. Ueno-kun is so tall. Hearing this, Ueno looked at Kuratani Sora who was looking at him with envy. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a shout coming from outside the corridor. Kuratani Sora-san! Exist! Sorry, Ueno-san, see you after class. Well, see you after class. Looking at Sora Kuratani who was smiling bitterly and running away in a panic, Ueno couldn't help but chuckle. And a moment later, Ueno heard the conversation between Kurotani Sora and a girl. Kuratani Sora-san, I almost thought you lost the water you were trying to fetch. I'm so sorry, Nai-san. Time flies. Maybe it was because there was nothing going on the first day of school, so get out of class ended very early today. It was only around 4 o'clock when the class teacher dismissed the class. Ueno thought they had finished class very early, but as soon as he left the classroom, he saw Kurotani Sora leaning on the corridor entrance in boredom, waiting for him. Long wait, Sora-san. No, I just finished class. All clubs in Dongda have their own club rooms and exclusive training venues. It's just that the basketball club seems a bit crude. After searching for a while, Ueno and Sora Kuratani finally found the basketball club. Before that, they also found a basketball court, which was indoors. However, there were no people from the basketball club on the basketball court, but people from other clubs. It was not like Ueno imagined, gathering on the basketball court or something. In the end, they had no choice but to find the basketball club. And their basketball club is in a small house without a chain. The location is right next to the basketball court. After exiting the basketball court, you can reach it just around the corner. Standing at the door, Ueno silently looked around the room. This small room was estimated to be only 70 square meters in size. There are 2 wardrobes inside, a long table, a lot of stickers of NBA big guys on the wall, and a few old benches, but there seems to be nothing else. If it weren't for the fact that the sign at the door clearly says basketball club, Ueno almost thought he was in the wrong place. Unlike Ueno, Kuratani Sora was extremely excited, and his face was flushed with excitement. Hey, you guys are here? It's quite early. Just when Ueno and the others were still looking inside the basketball club, a familiar voice came from behind them. Turning around and looking, it was the 2 seniors who were recruiting new students today. Hello, senior. Well, come in, it's a little rough, don't take it too seriously. Hearing this, Ueno didn't say anything, but Kuratani Sora said excitedly, No, this is already good. He glanced at Kurotani Sora who was full of excitement with some surprise. The senior casually threw his backpack on the table and pointed to the closet beside him. Just pick one at random. Just don't pick one with a famous brand. The one with a famous brand means there is someone there. The rest can be picked casually. After saying that, he leaned back lazily on the chair and started bragging with another senior. Yes. Seeing this, Kuratani Sora excitedly started to choose, while Ueno silently counted the wardrobes with famous brands. 7, plus him and Sora Kuratani. Only 9. There are fewer people than the basketball club in his junior high school. This reminded him of his father's words. There may be a gap in the basketball community. Sure enough, there is some gap. Picking a wardrobe at random, Ueno put his backpack away. He couldn't help but think of what he had just seen on the basketball court. He looked at the two seniors who were still bragging with some curiosity and said, "Senior, we are not going to practice ball." As soon as Ueno finished speaking, Kurotani Sora, who was sorting out his wardrobe, came over curiously. "Practice?" Hearing this, the two seniors smiled bitterly, and then one of them looked at Ueno's tall figure and said, "I don't know why you come to our school. If it's to study, that's fine, but if you want to play basketball, maybe you chose the wrong school." Another senior also said, "In our basketball club, there is no such thing as practice. If you want to play, please go find a place to play with the ball." As he spoke, the senior pointed to the corner of the basketball club. A very old bamboo basketball hoop was quietly placed there, with several shriveled basketballs and 2 pumps inside. This made Ueno frown slightly. On the side, Kurotani Sora was silent for a moment, and slowly walked towards the basketball basket under the somewhat surprised eyes of the two seniors. He squatted down and wiped the dust off the basketball. Just when everyone was silent, Sora Kurotani suddenly turned his head again, holding a shriveled basketball in his hand, and excitedly said to Ueno, "Ueno, this basketball is still good, it's just out of breath." Looking at Kurotani Sora's excited expression, Ueno suddenly felt helpless and inexplicable. Subconsciously, he smiled at Kurotani Sora. "Well, then cheer up." Chapter 7. Office of the President of Dongda University. Looking at Teikō Junior, who was looking a bit sad, the president of Dongda University took a puff of cigarette and asked with a helpless smile, "Still not recruiting anyone?" Zinhe sighed, shook his head with a wry smile and said, "No." Upon seeing this, Murakami, the president of Tokyo University, did not continue to say anything, but was silent for a moment before continuing to speak. "It really doesn't work, I can only think of other ways, or you can just go to other schools to serve as basketball coaches. After all, you can't, it's a waste of your talent." As a good friend for more than 10 years, Murakami understands Shinkawa's ambitions very well. That is to build a championship team with your own hands. In his eyes, the other party also has that strength. As for why the other party is in his school, the main reason is that Murakami also wants to make his school famous and make Tokyo University famous. So he recruited Zinhe to Dongda University as a basketball coach. It's just that reality makes the two of them somewhat different. Not to mention other things, Zinhe went to many places just to recruit people, but he only recruited one new person. Thinking of this, Shinkawa suddenly spoke to Murakami, the president of Dongda University, that classmate Sora Kurotani's family has some special circumstances. "I hope you can help me." Hearing this, Murakami nodded. "Well, I'll pay attention." After chatting for a while, Zinhe looked at the time, stood up, looked at Murakami and said, "It's getting late, I should go see my team members." Murakami nodded at first, but thinking of the dilapidated basketball club, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Are you really not considering changing schools?" After hearing Murakami's words, Shinkawa, who was about to walk out of the principal's office, was silent for a moment, then turned to look at Murakami and said, "If you can't recruit anyone this year, then try again next year." After saying that, he left. Looking at Shinkawa leaving, Murakami felt a little ashamed of Shinkawa. After all, Shinkawa had given up invitations from several well-known universities. When he received his invitation, he came without even thinking about it. So regarding this, looking at his old friend's sad face, Murakami couldn't help but feel a little guilty towards Shinkawa. He actually didn't understand why his school didn't have a famous place. Eastern University Basketball Court. Ueno, who was moving his body, looked at Sora Kurotani, who was full of excitement, thought for a moment and asked, "Sora, is there anyone else in your family?" Hearing this, Kurotani Sora, who was full of excitement, obviously changed his face. He paused, and then smiled and said, "My mother and my father, but my father is not in Tokyo. After saying that, Kuratani Sora ended his warm-up early and walked toward the basketball stand alone with the inflated basketball. Looking at Kuratani Sora's back, Ueno couldn't help but frown. But after a moment, he sighed feebly. There are some things that he can't do anything about, even if he already knows the plot. And he has also determined that Sora Kurutani should be the leading actor in Duck's Sky. It was also a basketball anime he had watched in his previous life. At this moment, in the basketball club, only Ueno and Sora Kurutani came to the basketball court to practice. As for the others, except for the two seniors Ueno had met, the other members of the basketball club had not shown their faces until now. Looking at the basketball hoop, Ueno tried to shoot a few balls. 9 out of 10 goals were scored, a goal rate of 90%. The feel is still very good. During the vacation, it can be said that he didn't play much, or he didn't even touch the ball. Because during the vacation, he basically spent time exercising his physical fitness. Aside. Looking at the tall Ueno, Kurutani Sora didn't know what to think of, and walked over with the ball in his arms, his face full of curiosity. Ueno, can you dunk? Hearing this, Ueno was stunned for a moment. Kuratani Sora's words reminded him of his only slam dunk, which was the game against the Miracle Era. Then he thought for a moment, looked at Teikō and nodded. That should work. As soon as Ueno finished speaking, Kurutani Sora suddenly became excited. Really? That's awesome. I also want to dunk, but I know it's impossible. As he said that, a trace of loneliness flashed in Teikō's eyes. Anyone who likes basketball doesn't like slam dunk? Especially when dunking a basketball into the hoop. Wild. Passionate. Exciting. Seeing Sora Kuratani looking a little lonely, Ueno didn't know how to comfort him for a moment. Looking at the other person's height of over 1.6 meters, he couldn't say, "Don't be discouraged, you can do it too." And just when Ueno didn't know what to say, Kurutani Sora suddenly looked at Ueno and smiled, "Although I can't dunk, I will try my best to pass the ball to you." Hearing this, Ueno was stunned for a moment, and the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up slightly. "If so, I will dunk your share into the basket." "Then it's settled." "It's settled." While the two were talking, several more people walked into the basketball court, wearing clothes belonging to the basketball club. "We actually recruited 2 people this year. But aren't these 2 people too tall? One is ridiculously tall, and the other is ridiculously short." While they were talking, several people had already walked up to Ueno and Sora Kurutani. A man who looked like a captain stepped forward and greeted Ueno and the others. "Hello, new ones. My name is Miya Ryoichi. I am in the 3rd grade. I am the president of the basketball club and the captain of the basketball team. These guys are also from the basketball club, 3rd year Murasame and Kimurari." After Mialiang finished speaking, Murami and Kimura smiled and said hello to Ueno and the others. "Hello. These 2 are 2nd graders, Kyuichi Kami and Nobu Yoshimori." "Hello. Hello seniors, I am the new student Sora Kurutani." Ueno Juri. Looking at Ueno's somewhat exaggerated height, Mialiang couldn't help but step forward and compare his own height. He was a few centimeters taller than himself. "Ueno." "Yes, Captain." "How tall are you?" Ueno thought for a moment. If he remembered correctly, he was 1.85 meters tall. 1 meter 85. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone on the side was shocked. With a height of 1.85 meters, he is definitely tall among college freshmen. And for a moment, they subconsciously looked at Teikō aside. When he saw the short figure of the other party, Gong Lianji frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. "Well, okay, let's start practicing. The coach will be here soon." With that said, he led Ueno and the others to start moving. On the side, Kyuichi Yui, who started to move his body, pressed his legs and asked curiously at Nobu Yoshimori, who had a straight face at the side, "Have you noticed that this Ueno looks familiar?" Glancing at Ueno who was warming up in front of him, Yoshimori nodded. "Kind of." Yui Kyoiki silently looked at Ueno for a moment, and then said to Yoshimori with some confusion, "Then do you know where we have seen him?" Yoshimori thought seriously for a moment, and then said calmly, "At the preliminary competition." "What? When did he fight us?" Jing Ai was a little shocked. Looking at the shocked Jing Ai, Xin glanced at him and continued to move. "Not with us, we haven't played any games at all this year." "Oh, let me tell you, haha." Smiling awkwardly, Jing Ai asked curiously, "What kind of preliminary round is that?" That preliminary match in the era of miracles was their school. Nobu didn't look at Kyoiki, but said aloud while warming up. And Xin's words also made some impression on Jing Ai. "A match against those monsters from the age of miracles." Sigh. "It turns out it's him." Out of nowhere, Jing Ai shouted loudly. Everyone could not help but subconsciously turn their heads to look at Jing Ai. This made Jingdu feel embarrassed for a moment, and he subconsciously looked at Yuxin, hoping that the other party would share the embarrassment. Where are the people? However, when he looked towards the letter, there was no one there. Nanny? When he turned around again, he was stunned. At some point, Nobu had gotten into Ueno and the others' dribbling warm-up. He was standing far away from Ueno and the others, looking at the confused Kyoiki expressionlessly. This made Jing Ai almost curse. But looking at the doubtful looks from everyone, he still smiled awkwardly. "It suddenly happened, I'm sorry." "I'm sorry." Chapter 8. Looking at Kyoiki with an awkward smile, Mia Lianji was already used to the other person's blabbing character, so he didn't say much about it and continued to warm up. Captain Mia Ryoichi didn't say anything, and Ueno and Sora Kuratani didn't even have any objections. On the side, Murasame asked with a very interested smile. "What made you suddenly excited?" In response to Murasame's question, Kyoiki pointed out his hand, looked at Ueno and said, "He." Everyone was a little confused at first, but when they saw Ueno's handsome appearance, they couldn't help but subconsciously took a few steps back and stayed away from Kyoiki. Xin, who knew the situation, did not explain it, but chose to retreat silently along with everyone else. This scene made Jing Ai almost lose his temper and asked for a duel with Xin. Seeing Kyoiki pointing at him, Ueno couldn't help but feel a chill on his back. "Senior, my sexual orientation is normal." Hearing this, except for Kurutani Sora, who was still a little confused, the others suddenly looked at Kyoiki with disgust. At this moment, Jing Ai was so angry that his hands were shaking, and he was extremely embarrassed. "That's not what I meant that he." "Have you hired a new person today?" Just when Jing Ai was mid-sentence, another old and powerful voice came from the door. When everyone looked at it subconsciously, I saw an old man wearing a pair of reading glasses, with white hair but a straight waist, walked in and looked at them with a smile on his face. Seeing this, Gong Lianji quickly stepped forward and said respectfully, "Coach." Then he shouted at Ueno and the others. "Line up." After a while, the basketball club gathered. At this moment, Coach Zinhe looked at one of the team members in shock, with a complex look on his face. There was excitement, shock, and a hint of disbelief on his face. Looking at Coach Zinhe's appearance, Jing, who was in the team, subconsciously bumped Xin who was standing next to him with his elbow. "What's going on, Coach? Is it possible that our basketball club is going to have a beautiful manager?" As he said this, Jing Ai's eyes lit up and he became a little inexplicably excited. Although this Coach Zinhe has only been here not long ago, it has only been more than 2 months, that is, he came during the holidays. They haven't been together for too long, and they didn't have any training during the holidays, so they don't know each other very well. But if the other party is willing to hire a beautiful manager, then Jing Ai will definitely love this old man to death. Xin looked at Kyoiki, who was a little wishful thinking on the side, still expressionless. He looked at Coach Zinhe carefully for a moment, and then looked at the direction where the coach was looking. After thinking for a moment, Xin said, "Didn't you notice that he was looking at Ueno? Is it possible that he has that hobby?" Hearing this, he saw that Coach Shinkawa seemed to be staring at Ueno, and his eyes were gleaming, which made Kyoiki a little nervous. On the side, Sora Kurotani, who was standing next to Ueno, looked at Coach Shinkawa with some curiosity and then at Ueno, who was staring at him intently. Looking at Ueno, Coach Shinkawa said with a smile on his face, "Have you joined the basketball club?" Ueno returned with a smile, "I have already joined, Coach Shinkawa, please give me your advice in the future." Hearing this, Coach Zinhe's wrinkled old face suddenly smiled into a flower. Okay, please give me more advice in the future." As he said that, Coach Zinhe looked at Che Gukong aside again, with an even bigger smile on his face. Suddenly something came to mind, and Coach Zinhe suddenly spoke to Gong Lianji on the side. "A Liang." Gong Lianji responded, "Coach." Looking at the gathered members of the basketball club, Coach Zinhe smiled and said, "Let's play 3-on-3. You will be the referee." Gong Liang was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at the others who were also confused, and then nodded. "Yes, coach." After saying that, he asked Coach Zinhe again, "How do you divide people? You really need to think carefully about dividing people." Hearing this, the coach couldn't help but look at Ueno and the others. After a moment, Coach Shinkawa said, "Ueno Juri, Kurotani Sora, Ueno and Kyo are in a group, and the rest are in a group." After finishing his words, Kurotani Sora suddenly said, "Coach Zinhe, aren't there 2 more seniors?" As soon as Kurotani finished his empty words, the atmosphere in the basketball court suddenly turned cold. But Coach Zinhe still smiled and said, "Those 2 seniors have retired from the club, okay, let's move your body and get ready to start." With that said, Coach Shinkawa walked aside and made room for Ueno and the others. Because it was 3 versus 3, it was played in half-court. Regarding being assigned to the rookie group, Kyoiki naturally believed that he should be the strongest in the basketball club. Otherwise, why would he be assigned to the rookie group? This is obviously for the sake of even strength. Otherwise, what should I do if I get beaten up by the newcomers, lose my confidence, and get beaten away? As he was thinking about it, Jing Ai suddenly realized that something seemed to have happened to him. Beep. But as Gong Lianji's whistle sounded, he no longer thought about it. Looking at the tall Ueno beside him, Kyoiki touched his chin and said, "Ueno, is it okay to leave the rebound to you?" Looking at the backboard behind him, Ueno nodded. "Can." Then Kyoiki said to Kurotani Sora, who looked excited, "Sora, you play point guard." "Yes, senior." Hearing this, Kurotani Sora nodded excitedly. The positions are well allocated, with Kurotani Sora as the point guard, Kyoiki as the shooting guard, and Ueno is responsible for grabbing rebounds and tip-ins. On the side, looking at Ueno and the others, Nobu and the others consciously stood in a good position with a tacit understanding. Kimura, who is also 1.8 meters tall, grabs the rebounds, while Murasame, who is 1.78 meters tall, is in charge of Sora Kurotani. As for Xin, he stood silently in front of Jing Ai and looked at him expressionlessly. Looking at Xin's dead fish eyes, Jing Ai said with some pride, "Xin, do you want me to let you score a few goals?" Xin remained expressionless, "Okay." Hearing this, Jing was stunned. Looking at the letter, he couldn't believe it. Is this still the cold letter I know? Toot. The game lasts for half an hour, with a 10-minute break. Beep. Both sides sent people to choose the heads and tails of the coins. On Ueno's side, Kyoiki chose Masaru. As the coin was tossed high, Kyoiki couldn't help but feel a little nervous on his face, and Kuratani Sora was looking at the coin intently. As Gong Liang grabbed the coin, he slowly showed the coin to everyone. Front. Haha, God's will. Seeing that it was really a frontal view, Jing Ai's face suddenly lit up with joy, and he raised his head towards Xin and the others with some pride. In this regard, except for Kuratani Sora, who was full of happiness, everyone else looked calm. Beep. The game begins. A whistle sounded. Kyoiki serves. The person responsible for catching the ball is Sora Kuratani. Although Sora Kuratani is thin, he still has a very good foundation in dribbling. After receiving the pass from Kyoiki, he swayed and dribbled the ball past Murasame. As soon as Sora Kuratani dribbled the ball out of the 3-point line, he saw Kyoiki waving towards him for the ball. After looking at the letter behind the opponent, Kuratani Sora hesitated for a second before passing the ball. Chapter 9. After receiving the ball and looking at his defense, Kyoiki hit him from behind. He leaned directly under the basket with Xin in his hand and said proudly, "Xin, look at it, this move is a trick that I have practiced hard for a month." As he said that, Jing Ai glanced at the basketball basket not far away, his face full of confidence. He wanted to let these two newcomers know who was the strongest in the club. Just as he was about to reach the penalty area, Jing Ai hit Xin behind him hard, trying to stop him. His eyes focused, he turned around, raised his hand and shot toward the basket. In Jing Ai's confident smile, the basketball hit the backboard hard. Looking at the basketball bouncing high on the backboard, the smile on Jing Ai's face gradually became stiff, a little embarrassed. "Get the ball." Under the backboard, Ueno and Murato were squeezing each other, their eyes fixed on the slowly falling basketball, both trying to get the best landing spot. Seeing that the basketball was about to fall, Ueno jumped up, grabbed the basketball with his big hand, and pulled the basketball into his arms with Kimura's ugly face. He hugged the basketball tightly in his arms, glanced around, and without any hesitation, Ueno passed the ball directly to Sora Kuratani who had just run out of the space. Sora Kuratani received the ball immediately and was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, his eyes were looking for opportunities, wanting to pass the ball to Kyoiki again. His ability to dribble, pass, and control the ball is good, but as for shooting, it is estimated that he can score 5 goals out of 10. And he is not very tall. If he shoots rashly, he will be easily blocked by the opponent. On the side, Xin took advantage of Jing Ai's distraction and walked directly in front of him, squeezing him behind him. While squeezing Jing Ai, Xin said expressionlessly, "I haven't laughed like this in a long time, Jing Ai, thank you very much." Looking at the expressionless letter, Jing Ai almost took action, but in the end he just gritted his teeth. "Xin, are you smiling? Laughing on the inside?" Aside. Ueno, who was under the backboard, looked at Kyoiki and Nobu, who were squeezing each other, and then at Sora Kuratani, whose face was full of anxiety. After thinking for a moment, Ueno ran directly outside the penalty area and reached for the ball towards Sora Kuratani. Seeing this, Kuratani Sora's eyes were filled with joy. If no one came to catch the ball, he would have to bite the bullet and do it by himself, because if he continued to hold the ball, he would have violated the rules. Kimura, who was defending Ueno, looked at Ueno who ran out. He was obviously stunned for a moment, and subconsciously looked at Murami who was aside. And Murasame was also very confused. According to their thinking, as a rebounder, you should stick to the rebound. But since the opponent ran, Kimura followed him and ran out. After all, his task is not only to rebound, but also to defend the field. With a swipe, Kuratani Sora passed directly in front of Murasame, and passed the basketball towards Ueno with a flick. Nice shot. He received the pass and felt very comfortable, and it happened to reach Ueno's running position. Ueno couldn't help but take a second look at Sora Kuratani. The opponent was definitely a good passer. Glancing at Kimura, who was about to catch up, Ueno didn't hesitate at all. He fixed his eyes on the basketball hoop and jumped directly to take action. The basketball suddenly drew a beautiful arc in the air. Everyone on the basketball court couldn't help but subconsciously look at the basketball. Whoa! As the basketball slowly fell, a crisp sound of hitting the net sounded on the basketball court. Score! Seeing Ueno scoring the goal, Kurotani Sora waved his hands excitedly compared to the others who were shocked. Ueno also walked over and gave Sora Kurotani a slap in the face. The ball moved well. Hey hey! The game continues. Ueno was still under the backboard, and it was Murasame who served. Pass the ball to Xin, and Xin immediately passes it back, a simple pass to the goal. Dribbling the ball, looking at the short Kurotani Sora in front of him who was guarding him seriously, Murasame subconsciously glanced at Ueno under the backboard. Ueno's strength made him a little confused, and he obviously felt very familiar, but for a moment can't remember again. Looking away, because of his height advantage, Murasame planned to hit Sora Kurotani to the three-point line and then throw the ball directly. However, he obviously underestimated Sora Kurotani. His figure was swaying, and Murasame planned to dribble the ball from his hips to squeeze the opponent into the penalty area. But just when he was about to pass the ball from his right hand to his left hand, Sora Kurotani suddenly shot towards the basketball. Frightened, he quickly blocked the ball and looked at Sora Kurotani with lingering fear. A crotch dribble was almost shot out by Sora Kurotani. In this regard, Sora Kurotani couldn't help but feel very regretful, and it would have been better if he had been faster. Dribbling the ball with some caution, once he reached the three-point position, Murasame was wary of Sora Kurotani, dribbling a few balls to find his touch. While dribbling the ball carefully, Murasame looked around with vigilant eyes. Kyoiki was being clung to by Nobu, and Ueno was still under the backboard. If he took action at this moment, even if the opponent tried to stop him, it would be too late. Moreover, Kimura is still blocking him, so he just needs to be careful about Sora Kurotani. After taking a few deep breaths, looking at the basketball hoop in the distance, Murasame retreated and took off without hesitation. When Sora Kurotani saw Murasame's thoughts, he immediately jumped up and tried to stop him. But the height issue is definitely a flaw, and in the end I can only watch the opponent take action. But at this moment, a figure quickly attacked and jumped up. Bang! A loud bang! I saw the basketball being hit hard and flew out of the basketball court, hitting the wall nearby. When looking at Ueno, who ran up to him at some point, Murasame, who was still in mid-air, had a face full of shock. Not only Murasame, but others were also shocked. Especially Kimura, who defends the upper field. Just now, he only felt a black shadow passing behind him. Then he saw a scene he didn't want to see. As the referee, Gong Lianji could definitely see it clearly, so he was even more shocked and disbelieving about Ueno than the others. His face was solemn, and Mia Lianji couldn't help but secretly thought, "This guy's speed is terrifying." As for Coach Zinhe, who was standing on the sidelines watching the game, the smile on his face became even stronger. The stronger Ueno is, the happier he is. Isn't this guy's speed a bit too much? As a teammate, Kyoiki looked at Ueno in shock and asked Nobu on the side. Xion's face was still expressionless, but his eyes were full of shock, mixed with a hint of excitement. Finally, we have a great teammate. The next competition was basically a one-man show for Ueno. Kimura couldn't stop Ueno at all, and the restricted area could be said to be completely owned by Ueno. The first half had just ended, and the score reached 40:27. This is still a situation in which Ueno is a bit lethargic. Chapter 10. Normally, there is no rest in between small competitions like these. After all, it was just an intra-team game, and it didn't last long. But since Coach Zinhe has said that he can rest, no one has any objections. Sitting on the rest bench aside, Ueno raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead, a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. As for the reason for the excitement, it was because a familiar cold electronic sound sounded in his mind again. Monthly sign-in starts. Do you want to sign in? Without hesitation, Ueno replied in his heart. Sign in. Bite. Sign in successfully. Ding. Congratulations to the host for gaining the talent of irregular shooting. The next check-in time is half a year. Hearing this, Ueno couldn't help but smile bitterly. The next check-in will actually take half a year? Although I was mentally prepared, I still felt a little uncomfortable. Including this check-in, Ueno has already signed in 3 times. The first time was during the match against Age of Miracles, where I got an enhanced version of Zone. The second time was a month and a half later, and I got the Beast Intuition. And this is his third check-in, shooting without rules. Unregulated shooting, as the name suggests. That is to say, you can shoot as you please, without any violation of regulations, and without any restrictions. This is also a Mindaki's unique skill. Especially when the opponent turns on zone, coupled with the irregular shooting, it can be said that it is simply a scoring machine. It's just that the check-in time is getting longer and longer, which makes Ueno feel a little uncomfortable. Sitting aside and glancing at Ueno, Kurotani Sora looked at the scores on the scoreboard with a smile on his face. Ueno, it seems we are going to win. Well, we must win. Seeing the happy Sora Kurotani, Ueno glanced at the scoreboard beside him and nodded with a smile. And the other side. As Ueno's teammate, Kyoiki was looking at the letter excitedly and said, I remembered. Seeing the excited Jing-ai, Xin glanced at him and ignored him, instead closing his eyes and taking a good rest. On the side, Kimura raised his hand to wipe the sweat on his face and looked at Kyoiki with interest. What did you remember again? It's him. He? I know it's him. What he? Looking at the extremely excited Jing-ai, Kimura was speechless. I'm so excited, can you explain it clearly? Have you forgotten the last time we went to watch the preliminary round of the Miracle Era? Do you still remember that there was a person who scored points when all the Miracle Era regular players were present? That was him, Ueno Juri. Finally finished speaking in one breath, Jing-ai's face was both excited and shocked. No wonder I always feel that Ueno looks familiar. After hearing Kyoiki's words, everyone couldn't help but subconsciously look at Ueno who was resting aside, and they were all shocked. They remembered it too. It was a game that shocked them. Monsters who single-handedly scored points at the hands of these monsters in the Age of Miracles. Especially since the opponent still passed 3 people in a row, and finally scored in an exciting way like a dunk. That scene is something they will never forget. You know, the Age of Miracles is the uncrowned king of the country. How powerful it would be to be able to score points in the hands of the uncrowned king. As for why I didn't recognize it before, it's because time has passed and I forgot about it for a while. Now that Jing was talking about it one by one, everyone suddenly started thinking about it. Coach Jinkawa on the side also smiled and said, well, Ueno is very good. After saying that, Coach Jinkawa walked towards Ueno with a smile on his face. Everyone in Zhou-Jing-ai looked shocked. What do I mean? Why is this guy so strong? It makes sense now. After all, he is a monster who can score even against the Age of Miracles. Then why does this guy come to our place? Have no idea. Then is this score a waste of money? Is it still necessary to beat it? As soon as Jing-ai finished speaking, everyone subconsciously looked at the scoreboard on the side. After reading the scores, they subconsciously turned to look at Ueno. Everyone's expressions changed. This guy is really a monster. Looking at Ueno, Coach Jinkawa was very happy. Regarding the game just now, he could clearly feel that the opponent was letting off steam. Ueno, Sora, welcome to Tokyo University. Coach Zinhe, we are also very honored. Standing up and looking at Coach Shinkawa, Ueno and Sora replied. Looking at Ueno, Coach Shinkawa suddenly smiled and said, Ueno, how about you go all out in the second half? Yes, coach. Hearing this, Ueno was stunned for a moment, then smiled and nodded. Beep. As the whistle sounds, the game continues in the second half. At this moment, Kimura and the others looked at Ueno with a serious look. Especially Kimura, who was defending the opponent, his face was solemn and vigilant, with a hint of helplessness and a wry smile. Although he didn't know what was going on, since the coach said he would go all out, Ueno still planned to show some trump cards. And, just in time to try some random shooting. After receiving Sora Kurotani's pass, Ueno went straight in. As soon as his left foot stepped into the three-point line, he retreated under Kimura's shocked eyes and got up to shoot without any hesitation. Whoa! The crisp sound of connecting to the network sounded again. Three-pointer, hit. Looking at Ueno, Kimura couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. What the hell is this? Stealing Nobu's pass with one hand, Ueno dribbled straight to the basket. Looking at Kimura who stepped forward to defend him, Ueno passed the opponent with a swipe. As soon as he passes the opponent, he immediately takes action and makes a sudden stop to shoot. Kimura just turned around and saw the basketball flying high into the air, and with a swish sound, it fell steadily into the basketball hoop. This made Kimura's mentality almost explode. Time flies. The second half ended with Ueno's solo performance and Kimura's being numb and shocked. Beep. The game is over, the newcomer team wins. There was no doubt in the second half, Ueno was on full fire, although Zone and Beast Intuition were not activated. But just by shooting without rules, Kimura and the others were defeated by 107-39. In just 10 minutes, he scored more than 50 points. Breathing heavily and bending over, Kimura put his hands on his knees, his face covered with sweat. Looking at Ueno who was only breathing slightly, he couldn't help but cursed again in his heart. Monster! Nobu and the others on the side also looked at Ueno as if they were looking at monsters. What a monster! The game was over, time was almost up, and it was getting dark outside. After the coach left, Kyoiki and the others said hello to Ueno and Kurotani Sora and left. As newcomers, Ueno and Kurotani Sora were left to clean. Mopped the basketball court clean and left. But as soon as they left the school, they found Jing Ai and the others still waiting for them, sitting by a flower bed and watching them. It's so slow. Hurry up. The captain said he wants to treat us to barbecue. Well, I haven't had barbecue for a long time, and I can finally enjoy a meal. Looking at Kyoiki and the others, Ueno and Kurotani Sora couldn't help but speed up and walked over. Seniors, you have been waiting for a long time. Let's go. Yes. On the way, he glanced at Miyoryoichi and the others who were chatting and joking in front of him. Ueno turned to look at Sora Kurotani next to him and thought for a moment. He thought that there would only be one class tomorrow afternoon. He recalled the memories from his previous life and looked at Kurotani Sora. Kong asked aloud, Kong, are you free tomorrow afternoon? Kurotani Sora was a little confused. Ueno, what's wrong? After saying that, he thought about tomorrow's classes, and then said to Ueno, I think I will have only one class tomorrow afternoon. If you have time, go to a place with me tomorrow. Where? Siren High School. Siren High School. Good. Chapter 11. Eastern University. As the bell rang, the class teacher finished class. Ueno threw his backpack on his shoulder and walked towards Class B next door. At this moment, Class B is also over. Looking at Kurotani Sora, Ueno raised his hand and said hello. Null. Long wait, Ueno. Ueno shook his head slightly and smiled, I have just finished class. While talking, the two of them walked towards the school gate together. Jorin is also in Tokyo. So they only need to take the subway and they will be there in no time. Siren High School. A new school that has only been established for about 2 years. And this school can be said to be a crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Muji typing has the iron heart of the uncrowned 5 generals. The 6th man of the Age of Miracles, Kuroko Tetsuya. There is also Kagami Taiga from the United States, who has unlimited potential. There are also several teammates with good potential. It can be said that although Siren High School is not the strongest college now, it must be the one with the greatest potential. On the subway, looking at Ueno, Kuratani Sora was a little curious. Ueno, why are we going to Siren? Several figures flashed through Ueno's mind, and he smiled at Kurutani Sora, who was a little curious. Let's go and see our future opponents, they will be very strong opponents in the future. Oh! Hearing this, Chaekukong nodded thoughtfully. Siren High School. Siren Basketball Court. At this time, the atmosphere on the Siren basketball court was tense, and everyone's eyes fell on the uninvited Kais. Ignoring the glares of others, Kais looked at Kuroko and smiled and said, "How are you, little Kuroko? Do you want to consider coming to our school?" "Don't want." Kuroko looked at Kais and shook his head without any hesitation, rejecting it directly. Hearing this, Kais immediately put one hand on his face, looking particularly sad. At this moment, a basketball exploded towards Kais. With his eyes focused, Kais subconsciously raised his right hand and grabbed it directly in front of him. Bang! Looking at the basketball that was blocked by him and feeling the pain in his right hand, Kais's eyes turned cold and he looked at someone on the basketball court. "Oops, I'm sorry, my hand slipped." Looking at Kais's cold gaze, Kagami raised a smile on her lips. Although she said she was embarrassed, there was no trace of embarrassment on her face. Looking at Kagami, Kais's eyes turned cold. "You guys are really infuriating." Faced with this sudden scene, Junpei Hinata, the captain, and Reiko Aida, the coach, were looking at Kagami in confusion. What's going on? But they quickly reacted, glanced at Kais who was uninjured with some fear, and then roared at Kagami Taiga, "Kagami, what are you doing? Aren't you going to say it? Your hand slipped. With such an obvious goal, are you telling us that your hand slipped?" In response, several black lines appeared directly on Reiko's head. Looking at Kais, Kagami hooked his fingers at the opponent and smiled provocatively, "Who is that? Do you want a ball?" Hearing this, Kais's eyes became colder. Everyone in Hinata was a little shocked, and most of them were speechless and helpless towards Kagami. Okay. Kais was originally in a bad mood because of Kuroko's rejection, but in the face of Kagami's repeated provocations, he was already angry and nodded with a sneer. Taking off his coat, Kais smiled at Kuroko and threw the coat to him. "Little Kuroko, please excuse me." While walking towards Kagami Taiga, Kais moved his wrist. "I'll play a few balls with you. I hope you won't let me down. I hope it's not me who's disappointed." Eyes locked, Kais and Kagami looked at each other with cold eyes. Suddenly, the atmosphere on the basketball court became cold, and others consciously made room for the duel between Kais and Kagami. Seeing this, Reiko was helpless and could only watch as Kagami Taiga and Kais began to duel. Since she couldn't stop this, she would take a good look at her strength as Kai's ace. Without hesitation, Reiko took out a small notebook from her pocket and started recording it. In the auditorium of the basketball court. Seeing Kagami and Kais who were about to start a fight suddenly, Kurutani, who had just arrived from Ueno, was a little curious about these two people. "Ueno, who are they?" Looking at the familiar but unfamiliar people in the distance, Ueno smiled. "One is Joran's ace, the red-haired one, named Kagami Taiga, and the other is Kai's ace, Kai's Ryota, who is also known as the Age of Miracles." "Two aces? The Age of Miracles." Hearing this, Kuratani Sora suddenly became interested, his face became excited again, his eyes widened, and he watched the duel between the two carefully. Although he likes basketball very much, Kuretani Sora doesn't know much about the miracle era or anything like that. But he knew something. The age of miracles created a dynasty within the country. But he also knew that Ueno had scored too much in the miracle era when all the first-choice players were present. So, Ueno should be stronger, right? After silently glancing at Ueno beside him, Kuretani Sora continued to observe the situation on the basketball court for a moment. Looking at Kuretani Sora, who was watching the duel attentively, Ueno also began to carefully observe the duel between Kagami Taiga and Kai's. It can be said that the current Kagami Taiga is not Kai's opponent. However, it can be said that the two of them belong to the 50-50 type after the full firepower in the later stage. However, in terms of strength, Kagami Taiga may be slightly better, and in terms of speed, it is Kai's. Seeing the two people competing on the basketball court, Kuretani Sora asked curiously, then which one of them is better? Leaning on the armrest with both hands and looking at the two people on the basketball court, Ueno thought for a moment, now, Kai's should be stronger. That Kai's ace. Well, he is very strong and can copy other people's moves. Hearing this, Kuretani Sora looked at Ueno in shock, copy other people's tricks. Ueno nodded, his eyes a little solemn. I don't know if the opponent will copy his beast intuition if he activates zone. After all, after the opponent turns on zone, the ability to copy is doubled. Even Amine's random shooting can be used. What's more, even Akash Chijuro's God's Eye is copied, although it is an incomplete version. After hearing Ueno's words and looking at Kai's, Kuretani Sora's eyes were full of excitement and excitement. They're so awesome. I really want to fight them. Don't worry, there is a chance. After saying that, Ueno added something silently in his heart, and very quickly. Before Ueno came to Tokyo University, it can be said that Tokyo University's basketball club had never signed up for any basketball games. Not to mention the strength, there are some difficulties in terms of numbers. There are only 7 people in total. Although you can sign up, as long as the other party starts a wheel battle, you will basically stop. Or if there is a small situation, 7 people can be said to be completely insufficient. At least 4 or 5 substitutes are needed. Moreover, the strength level of Dongda is indeed a bit stretched. But things are different now. Chapter 12. On the basketball court. Looking at Kai's, Kagami threw the basketball over and said coldly, "You first." Kai's subconsciously took the basketball from Kagami, feeling the impact of the basketball on his hand. Kai's eyes narrowed slightly, as the opponent was quite strong. But since the other party looked down on him so much, he didn't mind giving the other party a bit of memory. After simply dribbling the ball twice, Kai slowly dribbled towards Kagami, who had opened his defense. Looking at Kagami's defensive posture, Kai's couldn't help but feel a little contemptuous. Although the defensive posture was very standard, it was somewhat impossible to guard against him. As soon as he dribbled the ball in front of Kagami, Kai's pulled directly to the right, dribbling with his right hand towards Kagami's left side, trying to break through directly. Kagami looked at Kai's movements and without any hesitation, his body instinctively crossed to the left side of his body and opened his hands to stop the opponent. But the moment Kagami moved his left foot, Kai suddenly stopped and made a fadeaway jumper. In Kagami's somewhat shocked eyes, the basketball flew directly over his head. Whoa! A crisp sound sounded, and the basketball hit the net. Looking at the dropped basketball, Kagami's face turned slightly ugly, but she quickly recovered. Aside. Looking at Kagami, who was directly scored a goal, Reiko looked a little solemn and started to record it in her notebook. Excellent physical coordination and strong hand feel. Looking at Kagami and Kai's dueling again on the field, Hinata said solemnly, "Kuroko, can Kagami beat Kai's?" Kuroko thought for a moment, shook his head, and said calmly, "I can't beat him." As soon as he finished speaking, Kagane on the side suddenly exclaimed, "Kagami scored!" On the basketball court. Looking at Kagami who dunked with one hand, Kai's face was very calm, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, which seemed a little interesting. He released his right hand and got off the basketball hoop. Kagami looked at Kai's with cold eyes and said coldly, 1 versus 1. In response, Kai's didn't say anything, but walked aside and picked up the dropped basketball. In the audience. Looking at Kagami who suddenly dunked the ball, Sora Kuratani said excitedly, "That's amazing." Ueno smiled and said, "It's awesome, but these are just dowries." Dowry? What do you mean? You'll find out if you keep watching. As for Kai's, Ueno knew that Kai's would know it just by watching Kagami's dunk just now, which was purely based on physical strength. However, Kai's physical fitness may not be as good as Kagami's. After all, he is a technical player. However, 1 or 2 dunks is still okay. When Siren and everyone saw that Kagami scored, they couldn't help but look happy, except Kuroko, whose face was very calm. After Kagami scored, Kagane even shouted, "Kagami-kun, come on!" Looking at Kagami, Kai's dribbled the ball slowly and said calmly, "That move you just made was pretty good." Hearing this, Kagami smiled a little coldly, "Don't think that I will let go." Looking at Kagami's aloof look, Kai's first recalled the other party's actions in his mind. After confirming that they were correct, he raised the corners of his mouth slightly and looked at Kagami with a smile. "No, you are wrong." After saying that, he dribbled the ball and rushed towards Kagami. Seeing the opponent's movements, Kagami was slightly startled, and then immediately opened his defensive stance. Looking at Kagami's defensive posture, Kai's smile became even wider. His left-hand ball turned into a right-hand dribbling. He passed Kagami's defense with a back body and dribbled straight towards the basketball hoop. Seeing this, Kagami was a little surprised, but immediately turned around and chased Kai's. And just when he was about to catch up with Kai's, he froze, his face full of shock and disbelief. Kai's jumped up in one step, held the ball in his right hand and dunked the basketball into the basket. Isn't this action the same as what he did just now? Isn't this Kagami's dunk just now? This guy can actually do it. Looking at Kai's hanging on the basketball hoop with one hand, everyone in Changrin was a little shocked. Raiko even didn't know how to record it. This is Kai's ability. As long as he has seen the moves once, he can use them, that is, copy them. Just when everyone was shocked, Kuroko calmly said something that shocked them even more, "And it's better." Hearing this, everyone in Siren couldn't help but look at Kai's in shock. Clone. This guy is really perverted. In the audience. Seeing the perfect copy and even better one-handed dunk action, even though he already knew about Kai's ability from Ueno, Kurutani Sora was still shocked when he saw it. Is this Kai's trump card? Ueno nodded, without saying a word, looking thoughtfully, recalling the actions of Kagami and Kai's just now. It can be said that Kai's dunk is definitely better than Kagami's. This is also what gives Ueno some headaches, that is, Kai's can not only copy other people's abilities, but can even improve them. On the basketball court. Looking at Kai's, Kagami looked a little ugly. Just now. Well, it's your move, what's wrong? Kai's shook his hair, smiled at Kagami who looked ugly, and then ignored him. Kai slowly walked towards Kuroko. They played 3 goals, and now the 3 goals are over. 2-1, he won. And he still defeated him with his moves, but he admitted that the opponent did still have some strength. But, that's it. Looking at Kai's back, Kagami's eyes were full of unwillingness, especially because he was still defeated by his own moves. At this moment, he felt as uncomfortable as he wanted, and his hands were subconsciously clenched tightly. This guy. Looking at Kai's walking over, everyone in Siren looked solemn. Kai's is definitely a strong opponent, and he is also the kind of monster that can copy other people's abilities. With solemn eyes, Raiko carefully recalled Kai's actions and Kagami's actions just now. After hesitating for a moment, he wrote it down in a small notebook. Copy the ability and make it more perfect than the user. Looking at Kuroko, he glanced at the people in Siren who were looking at him solemnly. Kais took his clothes directly from Kuroko's hand, smiled at Kuroko who had a calm face and said, "Little Kuroko, I'm leaving first. I'll see you later. It's time to play with you again." After saying that, he planned to turn around and leave. But at this moment, his eyes suddenly froze, he slowly stopped, and looked towards the audience with a solemn expression amid the somewhat confused gazes of everyone in Changlin. Uminaja Sato. Chapter 13. Looking at Kai's looking at him solemnly below, Ueno smiled and said hello to him. Kai's Ryota, long time no see. Kai's Ryota's face was solemn. He glanced at the Todai uniform Ueno was wearing and the word Todai printed on the chest of the opponent's uniform. He said solemnly, "It seems that we still have a chance to fight again." Ueno nodded and said with a smile, "Yeah, right away." After looking at Ueno carefully, Kai's Ryota said seriously, "See you in the next competition." After saying that, Kai's Ryota glanced at Sora Kuratani next to Ueno and left. But he knew that there would be two more powerful opponents in the future. Jorin High School and Todai High School. At this moment, everyone in Siren looked at Ueno and Sora Kuratani in confusion. Who are they? When did these two guys come? Do you know Kuroko? Looking at Ueno's familiar face, Kuroko's face became a little solemn. Ueno Juri. Kagami's face looked a little ugly because of the loss just now. Ueno Juri? Is this guy strong? Is he stronger than Kai's? Kuroko was silent for a moment and said calmly, "Is it very strong? He is the only one who scored points when all the regular players in the Miracle Era played." Hearing this, Kagami's eyes were shocked, and everyone in Siren on the side were also shocked. This guy actually got his hands dirty in the Age of Miracles. Although they don't know exactly how powerful the Age of Miracles is, they can be sure of it just from the move Kai showed. The Age of Miracles is really, really strong. After looking at the people in Siren who were looking at him, Ueno also planned to leave. He threw the school bag aside on his shoulder, said hello to Kuratani Sora on the side, and Ueno turned around and left. "Sora, let's go." Nodding, Kuratani Sora looked at Siren and the others carefully. Since Ueno said that these guys would be very strong opponents in the future, he would take note of these faces. Just when Ueno turned to leave, a shout made Ueno stop. "Who is that? Do you want to play a ball?" Everyone looked suspicious. It was Kagami Taiga again. Looking at Kagami who was yelling at Ueno Juri, Raiko's face suddenly darkened. And Hinata and others wanted to drag Kagami away directly, and they all looked at Kagami Taiga with evil eyes. Turning to look at Kagami, Ueno hesitated for a moment, then nodded with a smile. "Okay." He took Sora Kuratani to the basketball court below and put his coat and backpack aside. After stretching his body a little, Ueno walked towards Kagami, who was waiting for him on the basketball court. He still admires Kagami. Although they are said to be competitive, which young person is not frivolous? The most important thing is that the other party has the kind of character that becomes more courageous the more frustrated he becomes. Throwing the basketball to Kagami, Ueno immediately opened his defensive posture, looked at Kagami calmly and smiled. "3 balls, you first." This time Kagami did not refuse, but started to play basketball. The competition with Kai's just now made him deeply aware of his own strength, and also made him understand something. There are people outside people, and there are mountains outside mountains. Dribbling the ball carefully, Kagami didn't know how strong the opponent was when it came to Ueno. However, the opponent can even defeat Kai's, which shows the opponent's strength. Although Kuroko didn't say that Ueno defeated Kai's, Kagami remembered one sentence. That is, Ueno is the only one who scored points when all the main players in the Miracle Era were present. So in his opinion, Ueno defeated Kai's. Looking at Kagami, who became more cautious, Kamiya sighed slightly. It seemed that Kai's had put a lot of psychological burden on him just now. But this is not a problem, because there is also Kuroko, the psychological master, who will rekindle the opponent's fighting spirit at night. Moreover, Kagami's psychological quality is not that fragile. But now, several black lightning flashed slightly in Ueno's eyes. Just when Kagami Taiga was about to dribble the ball closer, Ueno moved. Like a bolt of black lightning, it tore through Kagami and sent the opponent's basketball flying away. Now, he wants to destroy the other party's arrogant mentality again and let the other party grow up in advance. The basketball was slapped away by Ueno, but Kagami still stiffly maintained his dribbling posture. Bang! 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 On the basketball court, basketballs kept falling to the ground, making a BG sound. Looking at the basketball falling and bouncing on the side, everyone on the basketball court was silent. Looking at Kagami, who looked shocked and full of disbelief, he looked at the opponent who was still dribbling stiffly. Ueno slowly turned around and left. After picking up his coat and backpack, Ueno looked at Sora Kurotani, who was looking at him in shock. Let's go. Sora. Ah. Hi. He was stunned for a moment, but after Ueno had walked a few meters away, Sora realized what he was doing and hurriedly chased after him. Just when Ueno was about to walk out of the basketball court, Kagami finally reacted, turned around, looked at Ueno's back with a complicated face and shouted, "2 more goals." Listening to the shouts behind him, Ueno did not turn around, but raised his hand and waved it slightly towards the back. "You are too weak, you owe me those 2 goals first." As soon as he finished speaking, Ueno and Sora Kurotani disappeared into the Siren basketball court. Kagami, who had a look of reluctance and complexity on his face, could only think of Ueno's words, "You are too weak." Am I too weak? Looking at Kagami, who lowered her head and said nothing, Riko's face was full of worry, but she didn't know what to say even when she opened her mouth. She can be said to be very good at basketball training, but, to put it bluntly, she is not good at it. Hinata and others on the side also had complicated expressions. One Kai's already put a lot of pressure on them, and this one named Ueno Juri was even more powerful. They didn't see the figure of the other party just now. There was only a bang, and by the time he reacted, the basketball had already been shot away. But Kagami still kept dribbling. You can imagine how Kagami was feeling at that time. Aside. Looking at Kagami with his head lowered, Kuroko's eyes were calm and he just looked at him quietly. Lowering his head and looking at his slightly trembling hands, Kagami couldn't help but twist into a wry smile. Can't I even react in time? Am I really too weak? Ueno Juri, you are really strong. Against Kai's, he still had the determination and confidence to fight 50-50, but against this guy named Ueno Juri, he didn't. He didn't react at all to the opponent's speed just now. It's really scary. Looking at Kagami standing silently on the basketball court, Hinata was silent for a moment, looked at Kagami with some worry in her eyes, stepped forward and said, "Kagami, we." Just when Hinata started to speak, the silent Kagami spoke up, "Captain, are there many strong men like Ueno Juri in country R?" Hearing this, looking at Kagami's very calm eyes, Hinata was a little confused as to why the other party suddenly became so calm, but he still nodded subconsciously. It should be. Sure enough, returning to Daxia is really the right decision. It's really exciting. Looking down at his hands that were still trembling slightly, Kagami's eyes were full of excitement at this moment, and he felt his blood boiling all over his body. Then his eyes became solemn and serious again. "Next time, I will definitely defeat you, Kai's Ryota. Besides." Ueno Juri. Chapter 14. On the road. Looking at Ueno beside him, Kurotani Sora still had a little excitement in his eyes. "Ueno, just now, was that your real strength just now?" Hearing this, Ueno thought for a moment and nodded. That's right. He only used zone just now, and did not use irregular shooting and beast intuition, but zone is already his strongest trump card. His eyes thought for a moment, this should be considered his true strength, right? Ueno, you are so amazing. Looking at Ueno on the side, Kurotani Sora's eyes were full of excitement and admiration. Looking at Kurotani Sora's admiring eyes, Ueno felt a little embarrassed, smiled slightly, and said, "You can do it too." After hearing Ueno's words, Kurotani Sora couldn't help but fell silent, lowering his head and not replying. Seeing this, looking at Kurotani Sora who was silent, Kamizuki felt very uncomfortable, but there was nothing he could do. The opponent has always had a flaw, and that is his height. If it were normal, a height of more than 1.6 meters would actually not matter. But in basketball, it definitely stung. In fact, Ueno has been thinking about a question. That is whether Sora Kurotani can open zone. The opponent's talent looks pretty good to Ueno. There is absolutely no doubt that the opponent likes basketball. The two conditions for opening zone are basically met by the other party. But as for whether it can be opened, it depends on an opportunity. Or maybe cannot. The two walked in silence for a moment. Looking at the drink vending machine on the side, Shang Ye made a move and said to Sora Chagaya, "Sora, let's go, take whatever you want to drink, I'll treat you." "Thank you very much, Ueno." Drinking a drink, leaning on the railing by the lake, looking at the calm lake water, Ueno felt very calm inside at this moment. He liked this feeling very much. And at this moment, Chaga Kong, who had been silent for a long time, spoke up. "Ueno, does your family support you playing basketball?" After Kurotani Sora finished speaking, before Ueno could answer, he smiled bitterly and started talking to himself again. They should all be very supportive. After all, your height has an absolute advantage in playing basketball. I think everyone in your family will support you. With both hands subconsciously squeezing the drink in his hand, a trace of loneliness flashed in his eyes, Kurotani Sora continued in a low voice, "My mother is the only one in my family who supports me playing basketball, and everyone else tells me to give up. My height is not suitable for playing basketball. In fact, sometimes I also wonder, am I really not suitable for playing basketball? What do you think?" Ueno. Looking at Sora Kurotani, who was looking at him with expectations and loneliness in his eyes, Ueno was silent for a moment and said, "Do you like basketball?" Kurotani Sora did not hesitate, nodded and said seriously, "I like it." After saying that, Kurotani Sora recalled his childhood. He had few playmates when he was a child, so he often spent time alone in silence. When her mother saw this, she bought him something called a basketball. And from time to time I would take him to the basketball court to play basketball. Every time he goes to play basketball with his mother, that is when Sora Kurotani is happiest. From that moment on, Kurotani Sora knew that he fell in love with basketball. Looking at Kurotani Sora with firm eyes, Ueno Juri turned to look at the calm lake and chuckled, "Sora, let's make a bet." Kurotani Sora was a little confused, "What kind of bet?" "Bet on our future." Looking at Ueno Juri, Kurotani Sora's eyes were full of doubts. "The future? We will definitely be the top basketball players in the future." "Okay, I bet." Eastern University. A week has passed since the last time Ueno and Kurotani Sora went to Jorin High School together. During this week, Ueno and the others also started their basketball training. I also got to know Coach Zinhe again, and got to know another side of Coach Zinhe under his charitable smile. As for the members of the basketball team, there are still 7 people. And Ueno has naturally become the ace of the Dongda basketball team. Eastern University Basketball Court. "Jing'ai, what are you doing? Why don't you pass the ball quickly?" "Sora, what are you doing? Don't you know where to move? Run, run! Why are you just standing there?" Looking at Kyoiki and the others 3 against 3 on the court, Coach Shinkawa stood there with his arms folded on his chest beside the basketball court, looking at Kyoiki and the others with cold eyes and roaring. Kyoiki and Sora Kuratani on the basketball court felt trembling in their hearts. And aside, carefully looking at Coach Shinkawa who was roaring towards the basketball court, Ueno, who was practicing shooting, wisely changed his shooting practice to dribbling practice. On the court, Jing-ai was sweating profusely, breathing heavily while guarding the letter. What's wrong with the coach recently? Is he so grumpy? Xin raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead, and while squeezing each other with Jing-ai, he said expressionlessly, "It seems that the summer competition is about to begin." Summer split. Hearing this, Kyoiki was stunned, but at this moment, Nobu found the right time to get stuck in Kyoiki's position, caught the basketball and shot. Whoa! The basketball went in. Looking at Kyoiki who was suddenly in a trance on the basketball court, Coach Shinkawa's face darkened and he roared at Kyoiki. "Kyoiki, what are you doing?" Hearing Coach Shinkawa's roar, Kyoiki came to his senses, but he didn't seem to have fully come back to his senses. He looked at Coach Shinkawa blankly and asked, "Coach, do we want to sign up for the summer game?" As soon as Jing-ai finished speaking, the entire basketball court fell silent. Especially Mia Lianji and the 3 third-year students looked at Coach Shinkawa expectantly and nervously. Since the establishment of the basketball club, they have not participated in a single game. First, there is no coach and no formal training. Second, there were not enough personnel. In the first year, there were only 4 people on the basketball team, not even 5 people. By the second year, there were finally 5 people, but 2 people didn't want to participate in the competition and finally gave up. And this year is their last year. Although they say they don't care, who really doesn't care? Looking at Mia Lianji and the others who were looking at him nervously, Coach Shinkawa was silent for a moment, clapped his hands and said loudly, "Come here and gather together." After Ueno and the others finished gathering, Coach Shinkawa also sorted out his mood and his face calmed down. In 7 days, it will be the preliminary round of the summer season. As soon as Coach Shinkawa finished speaking, Ueno clearly felt that Captain Mia Ryoichi and others paused for breath. I glanced at several third-grade seniors and found that they were all very nervous.